Hello ladies and gentlemen, my name is Meoni of AceGamesTV. Today I'm going to be looking at SimCity. This is the 2013 release of a very popular SimCity franchise, made by AceGames and published by EA. Strong nostalgic memories of my youth here, coming back in the form of city management games. Single player options that would always turn into little bouts of who could make the greatest city with my friend. Times before the internet and times before I was addicted to MMO games. This really is SimCity, and that's what it means to me. A truly interesting single player experience that's offline and away from anything else that you would play on a rainy day or when the internet's out. Well, this gaming franchise has definitely changed since 1991 and my first experiences on the SNES, which is not a bad thing. After all, the progression of a game series is what keeps it alive and keeps it playable into the future. However, I did not expect the answer to be always online multiplayer bullshit. And that's exactly what Maxis and EA have decided to do. That's right, no longer can you play this game offline. SimCity 4 could be enjoyed on a rainy day with no internet? No! What the fuck is this bullshit? I have to play online all the time, and if the server disconnects, I lose my progress? Are you kidding me? What is this? Brrr, beer it back shotgun. Slightly calmer. I think you'll agree it's all justified though. I can't believe that companies have decided that this is definitely still the step forward. We had the same problems with always online DRM bullshit with Assassin's Creed, and that got changed eventually. You know, these companies think that this is the answer to piracy and people going on Pirate Bay and downloading a cracked version of the actual game, but in reality it really isn't. All this does is make the gaming experience worse than actually if you have pirated it. Now, I'm not endorsing this, but if you were to go on a certain Pirate Bay, you would be able to get this game cracked, and it works offline. I don't understand. So, you're getting your single player experience, that's awesome, but you don't ever have to play it online if you get the illegal version. If I pay real money, and bear in mind Origin is effing fucking vertical in terms of pricing, oh my goodness. Like, I'm not endorsing piracy, but this is definitely them endorsing it by simply allowing this bullshit to keep happening. Game companies, seriously, you just need to lay off of the Sambuca and just decide to keep things how they are. If it isn't broken, do not try and fix it, or you'll have this problem. So obviously this review that I'm doing, my first review for Ace, which bear in mind is a lot stronger opinionated than I would have imagined it to be in the first place, because I love these games and I personally think this game is wonderful, and we'll get onto that in a moment, but I just simply cannot endorse it to people. The question comes to, if you have problems with always online DRM, do not buy this game. If you do not like the fact that the servers are so shonky at the moment that you will not be able to keep online long enough to experience the game, past the loading times to get on a server to play a single player experience, just don't buy this game. Moving on from that, we have a game to review, not just an online service, and that's something that a lot of people may be forgetting on the forums in their blind rage. And the game isn't half bad, to be perfectly honest. There are a few problems, and we'll come to those in a moment, but let's look at some positives. The first 2 points I want to talk about are the changes to roads and zoning, two things that are definitely a positive step forward for the series. Firstly, we're going to talk about the roads. Roads are now the backbone of your city, as if they weren't previously anyway. But now, when the builders go out and they dig up the area and plant your tarmac in and make your roads, they also, whilst they're there, put down electric cables, sewage pipes and water pipes, so you don't have to switch to an obnoxious map and try and draw them in yourself. Hooray! Finally, a step forward for the series that's really making sense. This really does save a shitload of time and is definitely an improvement. I love it. The second thing, as I was mentioning, because these roads are so perfect, zoning works around them. If you want to zone an area, instead of having to block an area you want to be zoned and then try and wiggle roads around it, they stick to the sides of roads. If I wanted to, say for instance, zone this entire block, blocks are divided by roads. If I wanted more blocks, I'd add more roads and intersections. Then I would simply draw them on in the lines in between the roads, or I would hold control and click in that area, and bam, we have a zoned area in that block. Easy as pie. This is definitely a lot easier than it used to be. Instead of having to draw your way around a zone or whatever else you ended up having to do, a lot of time was wasted. But that's not to say that more time won't be invested in other areas, which brings us on to mapping. Mapping is always something that a lot of people spend a lot of time in these games looking at for various zone density or crime area in the area, so you can place a police station near it and what you need to do to cover that area or whatever. Pretty much there's a map for everything, and they're all on this little bar on the bottom right here, and they're all displayed very nicely, to be perfectly honest. It's very easy to understand that that is definitely the rich area of the city, and this is the shit area where the sewage pipes are. Oh, dear God. Work, minions. But yes, it's a lot easier to understand. I don't have to go on a cartographer's course for a month to understand what the fuck I'm looking at anymore, which is definitely a step forward for the series. From an outsider's perspective, it may seem like some of these changes I'm talking about is the dumbing down, in inverted commas, of the series. That simply is not the case, I have to stress here. This simply makes the information that was always there in these city management games still there, but easier to understand and visually appealing, so you can spend more time actually building your city and enjoying watching it grow, than going, how the hell am I supposed to do this? I can't understand all of these numbers, rah. So it's not all just a rape fest of numbers hitting you and critting you every 5 minutes. I play too much, wow, Jesus. The speed and growth of your city is determined by the speed at which you play at. And of course there is the tortoise speed, which is near real time, but not quite. We have llama, which is a bit faster, and then we've got the top speed, which is cheetah, which you want to be playing on if you can handle games like this, and you want to actually spend those 5 hours you're going to be sinking into this game watching your city at a slightly faster rate and see some more progression. However, at the time of testing there were problems. People have reported that it's server-wide rather than actually on your computer, and they actually disabled cheetah mode. Apparently you couldn't play on it because the server load was too high, and all of the mathematical calculations, whether this is true or not, are actually done server-side instead of on your client. I have no idea why. Their excuse was it's far too many calculations to do for a normal computer, and it has to be done server-wide, which I think is another bullshit excuse to go with there. They just want to prevent piracy crap, as usual, but it all really loops round to that, unfortunately. The problems that I've had gameplay-wise with this game have been, you know, various implications from this new server system. Like I say, if you're going to try something new, then you may be wanting to test it on more than just a few game companies playing it on the closed beta, and actually have had like an open beta. That would have been a good idea. A lot of games benefit from open betas because they get to actually stress test the servers, which these guys did not. And it's kind of inevitable when there's a lot of hype behind a game for people to want to actually play it. Why do people still not understand this? I don't know. But anyway, moving on. One of the biggest limitations of this new game is actually the size of the cities, and a lot of people have actually stressed this in the beta and onwards, with game journalists and normal players alike. People have all said that the cities are too small, and their response is pretty much that you're supposed to have like an industrial city and have people commute from a residential city, and then have like a commerce city, and they're all linked together. So they're a lot smaller cities, but they're a lot more dense in terms of like business, residential, and commercial, instead of just one big city. There's no terraforming in this game. You have to pick from a predefined region, of which there's about 12, I think. There's room for more, which I'm sure that since this is a Maxis game and a Sims franchise game, they're going to be allocating more via DLC, which is an inevitability, unfortunately. But yeah, you're limited to that. Any of these regions come with 1 to 2 cities, to all the way up to 16 cities with 3 great works in them, all the way up to like, I think it's 4 or 6, something like that. And the emphasis is that you invite people online to come and play on those different cities, and they're supposed to somehow communicate with you via no in-game communication as to what they need to do to actually win, which is kind of crap. There's no way of communicating with them directly unless they're on your friends list, which begs the question, why do they even bother with this? If I wanted to play online, build a commerce city, and then somebody comes in and just builds a load of power plants and then pollutes my city and then just leaves, how is that going to make me feel? That's going to make me feel pretty shitty. So obviously the idea is to create a private game and invite your friends, or simply just a private server yourself, which you have to play online still. You can't play it offline and just claim all of the cities yourself in a private session, which again is mind-numbingly just, I don't even know where to begin with what's wrong with that, because there are too many things wrong with that. But that's the major limitations. Like I was saying, if we look at this city here, we're just going to take a case study here. This is one of my cities. This is like a central city. I was going to make this full of a bit of everything, like you normally would in SimCity, in one of the older cities. So you would have, like, you've got your industrial district, you've got your commerce, and then you've got your residential near the coast, which is all very well and good. However, I run out of workers, I run out of commerce, and I run out of, like, places for these people to live, simply because then I need to go and then claim another city and then build a load of houses and so forth of whatever the demand is high of, which is fine. I'm sort of adjusting to that, but the old mindset of being able to create it how you want being thrown out of the window, this limitation really does sort of stifle your creativity somewhat. One of the other ways of getting around the stifling of creativity I'm talking about here is the inclusion of curving roads. There's a freeform button where you can actually make like snake pictures with roads. You can also do curved cities and ovals, like I've actually done in this one over here, where I've done basically like rings from the center outwards in like a peace symbol, which looks really cool, but it's highly impractical considering the limitations of the size of this city and the fact it's got a bit of everything. Before I realized that I needed to make these individual like commercial cities and so forth, this city really does fail. It has huge limitations because there's a high need for places to live. There's a high chance that people need places to work as well, and there just isn't anywhere for that. They have to commute to the other cities where there isn't actually any jobs because they're needing that stuff as well. So it's really awkward. It's really about the interchanging between cities, and the roads, albeit looking pretty, are so impractical. Like, if this was a grid city, I might just about to do it if I wedge everything in, but I cannot be as creative like I have been here and be successful. I mean, this city is making a massive loss. I have to raise taxes, which basically means that people move out because the taxes are too high, and then I have to abandon buildings. Then I've got to take loans. If I lower the taxes, people move back in, but it's not enough, so I've got to turn down the services. There just isn't enough room for growth at all, which is a real problem, and it's definitely something that impacts on the later game stages, which, you know, is fine. I don't mind scrapping things and starting from scratch, but I personally, you know, I want to see a city go from being tiny to being huge, and then actually coping with things other than just people abandoning houses because I raised the tax by 1% to try and cover the budget being basically put into the ground. So I have no idea what to do in this situation at all. If you do know, please leave a comment, because I'm completely dumbfounded by what to do here. But anyway, it is about that sort of time where I have to draw this video to a conclusion without spending longer than 20 minutes talking about the failings and successes. So we're going to break this down with a chart. The biggest negatives are obviously always online DRM crippling, the server system being shoddy and poorly hosted, the implication of not being able to play offline and having your saves, basically your progress not being saved when the servers crash, and then logging back in to find that you're, you know, basically re-rolled back before you made that success change or before that disaster, really takes the immersion out of the game for any player. The good points are obviously good structural changes to the way that cities are laid out. The structure is perfect. However, the limitations of a city are reliant on regions, and your creativity has to be thrown out of a window in exchange for you making a fully functioning region rather than a city, which definitely is a big downside. I would still highly recommend this game. Like, in the future, this DRM stuff has to stop, and I imagine under pressure they might crack, but they probably won't. There are various people who keep saying this, but games companies never listen to us, the actual gamers who play them. This server stuff is so silly, and I cannot recommend this game in good conscience as it stands. The servers are terrible. I was waiting 2 hours to try and log in to the game, so you actually have a waiting list for a waiting list, you know, and that's not good. I want to play my old single-player SimCity. So personally, I would have to say I don't recommend this game. And if I'm going to score it out of 10, it has to have a 4. Unfortunately, gameplay-wise, if this was a single-player game, I might give it a 7, because there's room for change in DLC and stuff, and I'd be more interested in buying that. But as it stands, with the way it is, it's got to get a 4. 4 out of 10. I'm really sorry. I'm a big fan of the series, and I really love this game, but I can't rate it higher. So anyway, if you have enjoyed this video, feel free to leave a like, leave your comments below. I will read every single comment. I'm sure there will be a lot of people saying I'm wrong or right, and I value all of those opinions. But as it stands, this is my experience on playing many hours of this game. It is a huge time sink, so it's definitely something, if you are a massive fan, you're going to go and buy it anyway. But for new players, it's really intrusive, and you're going to get very angry like I did. Thank you very much for watching my video, and I'll see you next time.